Oh my gosh.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Tim Case from the BendChamber. I want to welcome you to What's Brewing. You guys having a good time? Yes. Nice. Beer always helps, doesn't it? We're very proud of this location. We want to thank Deschutes Brewery for having us in here. At the BendChamber, we've done a number of things this year. Both directors, we got together for a retreat in January. We took a look at 3 different things, but one of them was our vision and mission. And I want to read this to you because it's very powerful. It resonates very well with me, and hopefully it'll do the same with you. So at the BendChamber, we believe our mission is to be a vital strategic partner, creating resources and opportunities for member success, quality of life, engagement, and meaningful impact. Our vision is to gather, equip, and mobilize our business community to drive a prosperous economy and unmatched quality of life. What do you guys think of that?
Fantastic.
Oh, come on, what do you think of that? There we go, that's what I want to hear. So what we're doing is we're going through and we're reevaluating all of our projects, all of our products and services at the BendChamber, and one of them is the Salute to Commerce program. How many of you have heard of Salute to Commerce? Raise your hand. See there, we got some work to do. The Salute to Commerce program is a fantastic program in partnership with Combined Communications. So each month at the What's Brewing, we will be awarding a Salute to Commerce winner at the event. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the program. The purpose of the Salute to Commerce program is to provide business exposure, credibility to chamber members who demonstrate successful business practices, engagement with the community. And what they get with this is a framed certificate. They get radio spots on Combined Communications. They also get an article in the Business Journal. They get their logo and they get a Salute to Commerce logo to use with their emails and social media and all that kind of stuff. We do a presentation to all their employees, and they're automatically entered into either the large or small business of the year at the Sage Awards. Does that sound like a great program?
Yeah.
All right. So if you know of somebody who you believe is deserving of a program like this, let us know, and we will add them to the list of folks that we review. Chuck and I go through quite a process to determine businesses that qualify for this program. We're very proud of this program, and I'm switching pages as I talk. There it is. Let's go. So we're going to move forward. We're going to do the presentation to Salute to Commerce. I'm going to thank our sponsors, and then we're going to get on with the program. So right now, would you please help me welcome Combined Communications, Mr. Chuck Chackle.
I'm going to give you a little history, quick history of Salute to Commerce, how we got here, and then we'll make the presentation. I started my broadcast career in Eugene, and as many of you know or don't know, Eugene is not a very business-friendly place. It hasn't been for a long time. And we started this program over there, and then when I came over to Bend and bought KBND and Clear in radio stations in the late 80s, met with the chamber and other business people saying, what can we do to educate people of Central Oregon to how important businesses are? Without businesses, there's not much here left. And it's not about the payroll, it's not about the number of employees, it's not about the profits, it's not about those kinds of things. What this award symbolizes is to educate people. When we put a message on KBND and some of our radio stations every month to talk about the fact that it's the time and the effort, it's the employees getting back to the community and volunteering in different endeavors for different charities and making Central Oregon a better place to live. That's the whole idea behind this, is to educate our population that business is a really important, very important, vital thing to our community and what it does. So in that vein, I'd like this month, we are going to salute SunWest Builders for what they have done in the community and the amount of volunteering and what that business means to this community in making it a better place to live. And so if Kevin Link is here, their project manager, I'd like to present this to him.
Come on down.
Yeah.
So thank you for everything that you have done for all the years that you guys have been here and the contributions that you make this a better place to live for all of us. So congratulations.
All right, thank you, Chuck. As we get started, I want to thank our premium sponsors. I want to thank Miller Lumber and SunWest Builders. Let's give them a round of applause for helping to bring this West Philly to our community. I'd also like to thank Bryant, Loveland, and Jarvis as our gold sponsor. We've also got Combined Communications, Deschutes Brewery, and Flip Flop Sounds. Let's give them all a round of applause. And now to introduce our monitors and panel. Please join me in welcoming Kara Ponzini. Ah, I said it right.
Go on, Kara!
Welcome.
Thank you. I will. Good evening, everyone. My name's Kara Ponzini.
Good to see you.
I'm an attorney at the law firm of Bryant, Loveland, and Jarvis. I learned today, actually, from Neil Bryant that our law firm has been a member of the BendChamber for 85 years.
Whoa!
So we're proud to be a sponsor of this event and many others without further ado. I'm going to go from farthest to me, closest to me, because that's how my list is set up here. But our panelists this evening are dispensary owner Jeremy Kwit of Well. Oh, I'm going to go this way. Okay, thank you. Well, it's my mistake. Attorney Kurt Barker of Karnopp Petersen, so we're going that way now. City Councilor Victor Chudowsky, Tom Towslee of the OLCC, District Attorney Steve Gunnels, and then our special guest is actually over here by me, Attorney Michael Hughes of Hughes Law. Our moderators this evening are Scott Ramsey and Jamie Chrisman, and I will give her the microphone. Thank you.
Awesome.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, thanks so much to be at What's Brewing. Let's clear the haze on Measure 91, right? I love that. Great job, Rachel. She gets credit on that. Hey, if you haven't already, pull this out. Keep it handy. It is a great reference. Some homework went into it. Not only an article in there in which was developed in a combination with Rachel, myself, and the team, and she did some hardy work on it. But also, Mary Winters, the city attorney, gives you some background on the Oregon and federal law. And then Kurt Barker, we have your feature in there on employment law. And then some of the statistics about where the finances are actually going or expected to go. So that's for you, and it's handy to keep and share. We have more BendChamber journals in the back. I encourage you to take those, and it'll also be online. Yeah, there you go. Share, I care. But real quickly, how many Leadership Bend alumni do we have in the room? Quick show of hands. High show of hands. High show of hands. Nice, right? All right, so at least 4 or 5. How about how many almost alumni in the room? Class of 2000, that's right. So, yay, they're about to be graduates, class of 2015. But that means class of 2016 is now open. So if you would like to nominate somebody for Leadership Bend, forms are on the back table. Shelley, will you raise your hand in the pink, cute polka dot jacket? And Bonnie has them. Please, get your nominations in. They're due by the end of the month. And I'm telling you, last year we had a waiting list, and suspect the same this year. We encourage you to get to know your local emerging leaders and get them nominated. Also, a couple of other things that are coming up. Speaking of Leadership Bend,
do you want to explain a little bit about what Leadership Bend is, just for those who do not know? Sorry, it's me over here.
I will, I promise.
Us insiders know what it is, but many people might not.
You're right. So if you really want to get the Clip Notes version of what this community is all about, when you pull back the curtain, it's a 9-month program, 1-day sessions all day long, that you're completely committed to getting to know this community. Maggie, would you agree? Absolutely. If you haven't had Civics 101 in this community, this is the way to do it, right? What about you, Ken?
Oh yeah.
Yeah?
More than civics.
What?
More than civics.
More than civics, exactly. You get to know your community leaders, and there are over 360 plus alumni that have been at this for over 23 years, many in the room here, but also key superintendents, city managers, elected officials, our sheriff. It goes on and on and on. So likely somebody you know has taken it or been a part of it, and they're worth asking what it's about. So, but speaking, each class finishes with a project. And that project is all about learning to fly the jet while you're building it, right? Yeah, they're over there going, oh. Central Oregon Impact Summit is this Thursday, and if you haven't registered yet, this is truly making an impact. This project is phenomenal. They basically help nonprofits of a certain size and capacity learn how to have good business strategy, coaching, and be taken to the next level, even if it's fundraising. And then this event, Thursday night, culminates in a $10,000 prize after 5 nonprofits do a startup-style competition pitch. Seriously. So they have got this all dialed together. Judges include Cindy Cook, Connie Drewliner, Tom Kemper, Jim Lee, Jim Lucier. Finalists include Better Together, Healing Rains, Family Kitchen, Latino Community Association, and Lapine Community Kitchen. And I want to tell you, this class is so committed to putting on this Impact Summit this Thursday evening that they contributed many of their own funds to put together the Audience Choice Awards. So when you attend, not only do you get to hear from the keynote speaker, the executive director from the nonprofit of Oregon, Association of Oregon, but you get to help choose the Audience Choice Award. Wouldn't you like to help find out who that is and be one of the first to come to this new model? So that's
$1,500.
Yes, we're giving $1,500 is the Audience Choice Award. It's outstanding. Exactly. And a couple other last minute items. State of the community address. Not your average state of the city or county address. Anybody here attend last year's first annual one? So a few show of hands. What this is, it's taking a look at where 95% of where your tax dollars go and how those entities are managing them, collaborating, and taking a look at key issues. So of course you have the city and the county, you have the parks and rec, you have the schools, and you have the college. Well, those 95% of your taxes right there. What are they doing? How are they handling things? How are they collaborating? Or not, SEC, I don't know, just things might come up. So I encourage you to come join us on Tuesday, June 16th. At the River House, sponsored by Mid-Oregon. By the way, Kyle's going to be on KBND in the morning for your town at 8:30 talking all about it, so thank you, Kyle. Be sure you join us. This is a not miss event. It's not your average state of the city or county address, so get yourselves there. You've got good questions. And then last but not least, this year, our awesome, exciting, most fun in Bend golf tournament is open to the public. So the Friday the 26th at Aubrey Glen, get your clubs there. Last but not least, goodness, I thought that before. Bonnie, we'll make sure everybody fills out this survey before you leave. Leave it on your chair or give it to Bonnie at the end. All right, we made it through all that. We've got an amazing subject matter to get through, and to tee you up tonight, I want to really remind you that you're here as part of the town hall. It's your discussion as well. When you do, I ask that you please stand, if you want, state your name, and keep your question a question. I think we're really going to have a lot of conversation, so the more concise you are, and the more concise you are, a couple attorneys up there, it'll go more smoothly.
And we will try and get the microphone to you when we see your hand. We try and do our best to get around the room.
Exactly, and so many of you know Scott Ramsey. He is my cohort here and partner in crime tonight. He'll be coming around. But to get us started, we're first going to hear from each one of our panelists what their role is and why they're joining us tonight. So on that night, Mr. Steve Gunnels, with the Deschutes County DA's office, Chief Deputy, will have you kick it off.
I'm Steve Gunnels. I'm a prosecutor here in Deschutes County. I've been at the District Attorney's Office for 21 years, and I'm primarily a drug prosecutor, so I'm pretty familiar with the current law on marijuana as well as the new law that's coming on July 1st, and that's what we're here to talk about. My role on the panel is the professional killjoy, as I see it, and I hope to fulfill that role. I'm here, for one thing, to remind everybody that come July 1st, it's not just marijuana is legal for everybody under every circumstance, free for all. There are still limits to amounts of marijuana, and there are limits to who can use marijuana or possess marijuana. Anybody under the age of 21 is forbidden under the law coming on July 1st from possessing any amount of marijuana. For example, people can't drive under the influence of marijuana, and I think there are limits set into the law that everybody on the panel and probably everybody in the room agrees is a sensible limit. with marijuana in public places. We're not going to be on the 4th of July downtown with huge clouds of smoke rising up. Or if we are, there are going to be a bunch of citations being issued to people. So that's kind of my role, I think, is just to remind everybody that there are still limits, and that we in law enforcement will enforce them. But there are significant changes coming, and that's what we're going to talk about tonight.
Thanks.
Oh, killjoy.
They said there was no feedback earlier. He's got it, thank you. I do want to remind everybody that on the back table, and we can hand them out, the press release that came out from the DA, Steve, is here with us, if everybody would like to see some of those rules and things. Thank you.
I'm Tom Towslee with OLCC marijuana program. First of all, let me say that.
Just hold it closer.
How's that?
You gotta make sure you
You have
hold
to
this nice
speak
close.
right down.
Okay, how's that? No problem, thank you. First of all, let me say that the OLCC has virtually nothing to do with what happens on July 1. We are not the regulators of personal possession, homegrown provisions of Measure 91. We will only regulate commercial growing, selling, wholesaling, and processing of marijuana, and that won't happen until next year. That said, because of our involvement in the regulatory side of marijuana, we have become the go-to agency for all things marijuana. I get calls all day from people who want to know what do they do if the marijuana smoke is coming over the fence from their neighbor. What we'll be doing in the next 3 months is we'll be launching an educational campaign in the middle of the month that is an attempt to educate people about what they can and can't do on July 1. The tone of this is purely educational. We are non-judgmental. We are not here to advocate for the use of marijuana, talk about its evils or its benefits. We just want people to know what the law is and what they can and can't do on July 1. So we'll assume that role in being the conduit for this campaign. But once again, we're not enforcing personal possession, homegrown provisions. Our work starts now in writing the regulations for the regulated market. We're doing that through the summer into the fall, and the actual issuing of licenses will start next year.
Chudowsky, I'm the Bend City Council. Can you hear me okay? Basically, City Council has a certain regulatory role insofar as marijuana is concerned, which I'll talk about. But first, a little bit about the context that we're operating in. 57% of Bendites voted in favor of marijuana legalization. It's roughly equal to what happened at the state level. It was about 56%. So, there has been this change in public attitudes about marijuana. That's one development. But on the other hand, there still is this concern about addiction, about increased use of marijuana by young people. Chief Porter, our police chief, was here earlier. I don't know if he's still here, but he's terribly concerned about people driving under the influence, for example. And there are also concerns about livability impacts. It was interesting that just recently there was a medical marijuana facility wanted to open up on Galveston Avenue. It was interesting because that neighborhood, that particular precinct, voted in favor of legalization by 70%. But yet, when there was some pretty significant pushback from the neighborhood on the location of this store, which I thought was rather surprising. That neighborhood, of course, is under already a certain amount of stress from drunkenness, the alcohol situation, vacation rentals, and that type of thing. So we have these kind of parameters that we have to operate in. So on one hand, we know that people want access to marijuana, obviously. But on the other hand, we have to deal with these livability impacts and other things. So maybe, this time around, the city can kind of get ahead of the curve rather than being behind it. So on regulation, this is roughly what we can and can't do. What we can do, we can regulate what's called time, place, and manner. So that's the times that a store can be open, its hours, the location within the city limits, distance from a school or one another. We can regulate the appearance of the sign from the establishment, although we can't regulate the content of that sign. And we can also look at certain safety limitations on indoor growing. There's concern, for example, about people doing this kind of butane extraction process in their homes. Now, what we can't do, a couple of things. First of all, we can't impose a tax. Measure 91 has specific provision saying that cities can't tax recreational marijuana. So the state will be collecting the tax funds. They'll take 10% of that tax money and distribute it to the cities. But the interesting thing is, for the first year, I think, after legalization, that money will be distributed on the basis of population. But after that, starting in July 2017, it'll be distributed on the basis of how many licenses a city has. So the more licenses we have for production or retail outlets, the more money we get from the state. Obviously, the more restricted you are, the less money you get. So that's an interesting kind of constraint or incentive that's provided to tactics. Tactic, yeah, that's good. Good word. And the other thing is we can't do is we don't regulate the product itself, kind of what OLCC is covering, that whole seed to sale thing that we can talk about. So we put together a subcommittee of people, myself and my colleagues, Casey Rhodes and Nathan Body. And we're going to be going out to the community to get ideas of what people want legal marijuana to look like in Bend. And so we'll be starting that this summer. We're under certain limitations that you have to wait for the state to really finish what it's going to do on the regulation side and take it from there. So in any case, if you have compliments about this whole process, you can direct them to me. If you have complaints, you can direct them to Casey.
Hi, I'm Kurt Barker. There we go. Can you hear me okay? Kurt Barker with Karnopp, Petersen, your friendly neighborhood employment attorney. So please don't shoot the messenger. Like Steve, I feel like a little bit of a killjoy on this topic. I'll try to get to some practical solutions, or maybe you can elicit some from me with your questions later, because the legal landscape for the workplace, it's pretty well defined here. And Measure 91 does not change that. I want to read one section from the statute that I think might be of interest to you if you haven't heard it before. The statute specifically says it will not amend or affect in any way any state or federal law pertaining to employment matters, period. So, same sentence is virtually repeated for the landlord-tenant context. So what does that mean? It's not a game changer. It doesn't change the legal landscape. Now, practically speaking, from a management point of view, from an employee point of view, we got a real problem. It is a game changer in the sense that people's expectations are changing, people's behavior will likely be changing. After July, what do? You got an article for me in the back, but I want to briefly highlight a couple things that are near and dear to my heart in terms of practical tips. Employers who are concerned about this issue should be clarifying their position now, before you're less than 31 days to roll out until it's legal.
No pun intended.
Yeah.
Can you speak up just a skosh, Kurt? Because at the back I can barely hear you.
Sorry about that. I'll swallow the microphone a little better. Sending out a message now. I mean, if you, I didn't say hail the microphone. Sending out a message now. If you already have a zero tolerance policy, you say you're going to test for illegal drugs. What does that mean? You better clarify. It's still illegal under federal law, and you have the right to test for that, and you will do so if that's your approach. Now, keep in mind, a lot of employers, a lot of businesses here, even locally, have their hands tied by federal regulations, such as the Drug-Free Workplace Act. If you're a federal contractor, federal grantee, you might have to require zero tolerance. Or Department of Transportation rules, license testing. You might have to go that route. Employers who want to be a little more flexible, though, I'll tell you what some of my clients are looking at now. folks are looking at a different approach to testing. What about saliva tests? What about not making people go down for urine testing? In general, I'm not a doctor, by the way, but those urine and hair follicle other tests have a much farther look back window. Saliva tests are a little bit more contemporaneous. What's in your system right this second? So there's employers that are looking at different approaches to show a little bit more leniency on this. But as I mentioned in my article there, you have to keep in mind how it's going to look if you just completely turn a blind eye to a particular form of intoxication and then have a major workplace accident. That's a problem for business and for whoever got hurt too. I'm hoping you're going to give me some good questions on what employees can do, because I think my 3 minutes are up and I'm feeling kind of sensitive on that topic, thanks to the lawyer jokes. I'm going to move on. But I think employees do have some options here about being proactive, but we'll get to those later.
Thanks, Kurt. Jeremy.
Hello, I'm Jeremy Kwit. I operate Bloom Well, which is a community agency that provides safe access to cannabis in a judgment-free environment. I mean every word of that statement. We've been operational for about 1.5 years now, and we're located on Northeast Division right at Revere off exit 137. As a dispensary operator, I want to talk about 3 things tonight. I want to represent the perspective of the cannabis consumer, or the medical patient as they are so called now. I want to talk about, a little bit about the marijuana industry in general and some of the regulations that are currently in effect and those that are coming towards us. And then I want to talk about the near future and the role that well-run dispensaries can play with cannabis in our community. One thing that I'd like to be really clear about is that everybody uses cannabis. Everybody in this room uses cannabis or knows somebody that uses cannabis. The concern that come July, everybody's going to go out and try cannabis and go crazy with cannabis, I think is a misnomer. I think it's fear. Everybody already uses cannabis. The problem is not everybody has legal, safe access to cannabis, so they get it from the black marketplace. So all these regulations that are coming towards us are awesome. I'm a business person. My background is in management consulting. As a management consultant, I would have never expected myself to stand in front of a room full of people and say, we actually need more government regulation. Because the reality is that we do. Because there are elements of the cannabis industry, they're very much like the Wild West, and those do 2 things. They invite potential federal intervention, which we don't want in our state, and it also fuels the black market. And so the concern about cannabis being in the hands of kids, the reality is it's in the hands of kids. When you have well-run dispensaries, we put low-level drug dealers out of business. Those low-level drug dealers are the ones that sell cannabis to kids, and importantly, they sell other drugs to kids. They sell them Molly or MDMA, they sell them oxycodone, they sell them alcohol. So what we've seen and research shows is that in states where there are regulated cannabis marketplaces, both medical and non, teen access to cannabis drops, because again, the low-level drug dealers out of business, and teen usage drops. And this is from the California Society of Pediatrics and the American Society of Pediatrics. Teen usage drops because of the forbidden fruit effect, and it's a sociological term that when you have your grandmother, your uncle, your aunt, your mom, a lot of other people who are very normal in your life using cannabis as a teenager, cannabis is a lot less attractive. The reality is we card everybody, and so in our facilities, we're not selling cannabis to kids. From my conversations with the police, even here in Bend, teenagers have more access to heroin than they do cannabis, and it's cheaper on the street. So everybody uses cannabis. People use cannabis to feel better. And the irony is not lost on me that we're having this conversation in a brewery, and nobody's going crazy, nobody downstairs. We're not worried about everybody downstairs having dinner, jumping in their, well, I guess we are worried about jumping in their cars and driving home after a vet bomb liver. Or jumping in their car after having consumed several pints of cannabis. We already have several pints of beer. We'll see cannabis beer soon. Thank you, Cameron. No, we already have laws that prevent and discourage drunk driving as well as drug driving. And so law enforcement is already well in tune with the use of cannabis and their ability to pull people over based on poor driving, not necessarily smell, but poor driving, and they can look at your eyes and see based on dilation what kinds of drugs you may have been using and how long ago. And so we already have laws in place that discourage cannabis driving, or driving while using cannabis. The other point is well-run organizations like ours, we have information cards that talk about how to be a good cannabis consumer, which talk about not using cannabis and then negating your social obligations. Don't medicate and drive. We talk about that. It's in our policy agreements that our clients sign when they join and they come into our facility for the first time. We orally review that. We give them an info card that also talks about not using cannabis and driving, and that cannabis use has risks, and like any drug, any medicine, it can be abused. Food can be abused, sugar can be abused, alcohol can be abused, tobacco. Just because things can be abused. Sir, what's that? So, touche. So anything can be abused, but that doesn't mean we villainize it or criminalize it and demonize it. And so fortunately, we're moving from a place where cannabis that has been historically stigmatized and criminalized and villainized is now moving into the light where we no longer have to have prohibitionist policy, where we can have sensible policy, and that sensible policy is happening now. The creation of that policy is happening now. Our legislators are talking about SB 964 right now about how to further regulate the whole medical supply chain. And under SB 3400, they're talking about how they'll regulate the OLCC supply chain of cannabis. And so if you're concerned about cannabis in the future, the very near future, you can have conversations now with your legislators because they're discussing how to further enhance the regulation of cannabis in our state.
All good points we're going to bring up too, Jim.
Okay.
If you can wrap. Great.
So the other point that I'd like to point, the other thing to consider is that in this changing regulatory environment, I'd like to state that medical dispensaries now that are operational, that have been licensed and inspected by the Oregon Health Authority, are the best suited organizations to sell cannabis to all adults. Whether that's starting this July or starting this October, which there's discussion about letting regulated dispensaries sell cannabis to all adults this October. We've already got the safety and security features in place. We've got the standard operating procedures in place. We have lab-tested medicine for both potency and safety, and most importantly, we have the staff that's been operating as consultants and teaching people about cannabis and helping people learn about cannabis, and so we are the ones who are best suited to serve all adults. Thank you.
All right. Well, you have teed us up well, Jeremy. So Michael's giving you a couple of minutes to respond. Tom, I think you've been biting your tongue for about 3 minutes. If there was anything you wanted to say, or you feel like we can circle back as soon as we get through Michael. Okay. All right.
My name's Mike.
Well, hold that close.
My name's Michael Hughes. I'm a trial lawyer, a consultant. I have an office here downtown Bend, and I work a lot with the cannabis industry. I see a lot of familiar faces out here, and I am a trial lawyer. I'm an author. I'm also a farmer, and I've been involved in cannabis production for many, many, many years. And when we talk about cannabis production, we often, on the West Coast especially, we just are familiar with the recreational market or the medical market. Many people like me who first got in this industry in the 80s only knew one market, and that was the black market. And it's good to be here today talking to the Chamber of Commerce about cannabis businesses, because for far too long we have had a black market around this industry, and we're leaving that failed policy, and we're moving to a policy of taxing and regulating. And I know all my clients and the gentleman sitting next to me, Jeremy, and everybody goes out of their way to try to be compliant with all the laws, and that is no easy task for a cannabis business. They are taxed at a rate that, as you business people sitting here that run regular businesses, you would pass out if you were taxed under 280E like cannabis businesses are. You wouldn't survive as a business. Not even for a half a year would you survive as a business if you were taxed under 280E. Now let's talk about trying to do business without a bank, or without credit card services, or without any of the other things that normal businesses have and operate in. So before we even get to the regulations that the OLCC is going to put out, and before we can get to what the legislature is going to do, we've got a giant federal issue here that needs to be taken care of, because until my clients can have access to banks and can access to capital and can be treated like every other business, they're going to be handcuffed. And even though they're handcuffed, guess what? They're still going forward at 110%. Now, for the business community here, let me read some numbers from Colorado
Pull that mic back up again.
that I think you would be very interested in. From Colorado last year, 2014, 9,400 jobs created in the legal Colorado marijuana sector. Colorado has a marijuana enforcement division that handles both their recreational or adult use market and their medical market. And at the beginning of the year, there were 6,600 state badges issued. They require you to get a state badge to work in the industry. 6,600 issued. By the year's end, that was 16,000 jobs created by the legal cannabis industry in Colorado. Now that's 16,000 jobs that go to taxpayers, people that are paying taxes. That's not money that's leaking into the black market, that's going to cartels, that's escaping the tax system of the state. This is an economic revolution that we're in the midst of. And it is something that for the pioneers, and I sit out and I see their faces in this audience, and they're pioneers in this industry, and they're putting their necks on the line, and they're taking the hits now. And they're asking the people from the business community that they want to stand shoulder to shoulder with to help them become regular business people. Talk to your congressman and go, we in Oregon want tax and regulated cannabis businesses, and we need the federal government to help us create this industry in a way that looks like other industries, and not an industry where we're having to have truckloads of cash taken from a dispensary because we can't get a bank to do business with us, or industries where they can use credit card services and not have to have huge loads of cash at the end of the day that they've got to try to deal with, and to have financing so they can expand and so they can and build their businesses. These are all things that are important, and these are all things that I know people from the cannabis community are asking people from the regular business community to understand the dilemma they're in and think about how your business would operate if you were under these circumstances, and then ask yourself, if you want to get rid of the black market, if you don't want to see somebody dealing weed at the back of Walgreens, then we need to support these businesses. And to support these businesses, these are the things we've got to ask our representatives and the people that are in charge to do something. And if we could get help from the regular business community to say, hey, you know, I'm not a cannabis business, but this is crazy that they pay 80% taxes because they can only take their cost of goods off their deductions. And they should be able to get a bank. You know, if these businesses are going to be in our community, we don't want these cash-only businesses being vulnerable to themselves getting ripped off for strong-arm robberies like we see down in California. So I'm kind of here to hopefully get people to realize that this is something we should have done a long time ago, but we're doing it now. And if we're going to do it, let's do it right. And let's not create an industry that is handcuffed with both hands behind their back, battering their head against a brick wall, trying to do business in an upfront and honest way, and yet every time they turn around, there's some bureaucrat or somebody else who's throwing a cog in their machine. And so it's great to be in front of the business community, because I think some of you as regular business people don't understand what the cannabis industry is facing now. And hopefully with your help, you guys will understand that, and from the chamber's perspective, can help present some of these issues to our politicians so we can get some of these laws changed so we can truly normalize this industry.
Great. Well good. So that said, you can certainly identify the varying passions and roles here with us. And I know you were biting your tongue. This is the moment where I encourage you to pick up the mic and either respond to one another or bring up and finalize questions here before we hit the audience.
One of the, early on in this process, the OLCC had a series of listening sessions around the state. We had one here in Bend that drew almost 400 people. And we learned from those listening sessions that that were dominated by people in the marijuana community, or want to be under this new business opportunity. We found that a lot of these people were very passionate, knowledgeable, and savvy, not just about marijuana, but about business. They were also somewhat evangelical about finally getting legal marijuana in Oregon, and I want to thank Jeremy for reinforcing that evangelical tone that we heard around the state. Secondly, let's talk about regulation, because we actually regulate here. OLCC will regulate this industry. One of the things we learned, and I assume most of the people here are business people, regulation costs money. If you are a regulated industry, even if you're not, government regulation costs you money. The more regulation that we impose drives up the cost of these marijuana businesses and makes it that much more difficult for them to diminish the black market. So what we're trying to do is strike a balance, not to over-regulate this industry, that we drive up the cost and they can't compete with the black market, but at the same time we need to provide some regulation to make sure that this product is not leaking into the black market. We would like that to see that same kind of regulation in other marijuana programs. We haven't seen that. Maybe we will. But until there is some sort of regulation, particularly on grow operations, the black market is not going to go away.
Thanks. Other comments? We'll keep the mics on and let you comment anything that you've heard, or maybe you have a question based on what was presented here already. Not yet? Okay. Okay.
My interest is this relationship between medical marijuana and retail marijuana. How this is all going to work out, because you have one bureaucracy dealing with the medical side, and now another one recreational. And I would just like to ask maybe you, Tom, or you, Jeremy, how you see, is that going to remain separate, or are those two things going to come together? Is it under one roof, or how do you see that happening?
And if you want to clarify what the two authorities are for those in the room.
Oh, I'm sorry. So Oregon Health Authority regulates medical marijuana, OLCC regulates retail.
Measure 91 made it very clear that the medical marijuana program was to remain the same. Having said that, Measure 91 is a statutory measure. The legislature can change it. So we, the OLCC commission stated very early on, when there was discussion of merging medical and recreational into one system, that we were not interested in taking over a medical marijuana program that didn't have the same kind of regulated environment that was envisioned by what voters passed in Measure 91 last year. We just couldn't get through our head how those two systems could exist side by side within the same agency and still achieve the goal of diminishing the black market. The short answer to your question, Councilman, is that that's up to the legislature. I spent 7 years working for the United States Senate, and I can tell you that the politics of the United States Senate are nothing compared to the politics of marijuana. The conflict between recreational marijuana and medical marijuana is Byzantine at best. The legislature has a very short period of time to figure that out. What OLCC is doing, we're pursuing, we're going ahead with Measure 91 as it was passed by voters. If the legislature gets around to doing something else and imposing some changes to Measure 91, we'll adapt. But we have a short timeline here to get this program up and running, so we're going to move ahead with the way that it is today and make our changes later on.
Thank you, Tom, for acknowledging my passion. John Stuart Mill, who was an 18th century British political philosopher, said that we are each our own sovereign nation. So I am passionate about myself and my body, and I don't expect that my government should have the right to tell me what I put into my body or what comes out of my body. Currently, when we talk about regulation, I want to clarify that much of the medical marijuana program or the medical marijuana supply chain is not licensed. There's some regulations, there's rules, but it is not a fully licensed supply chain. So there are cultivators or producers of cannabis, there are folks that process that cannabis, creating extractions or edible products, there are folks that are distributors of the cannabis, and then there are the retailers. And currently in the supply chain, and this is something that's of concern to the OLCC, rightfully so, it's only the retailers, the medical marijuana dispensaries, that are licensed. We have a $4,000 annual fee. We're subject to random on-site inspection by an Oregon Health Authority compliance officer who shows up with a badge, walks through our whole facility with an iPad checking out to make sure that everything that we do with respect to our safety and security, our cameras, our DVR backup, our battery backup of the DVR, our standard operating procedures, our lab testing, that we have everything in place to be licensed and operational. And I have concerns also that when you don't have licensure and deeper regulation of the rest of the supply chain, there's leakage into the black market, and that's a concern. So SB 964 and other bills that are currently in discussion in Salem are helping to get their heads around what the OLCC is concerned about in the medical program, which is lack of a seed-to-sale tracking system. So you're going to hear that word a lot, seed-to-sale tracking system. So the medical program and many medical operators, as growers, processors, distributors, welcome more regulation, and we will expect to see licensing, which includes monitoring and reporting and documentation requirements and documentation backup requirements. Some of the documentation backup requirements extend for a 7-year period. So we are overregulated like no other business. So we will start seeing more regulations in the medical regime or the medical supply system. And if the medical supply chain is fully licensed and regulated, there's a chance that both the OLCC licensed facilities and medical marijuana licensed facilities can coexist, either in the same facility or nearby.
Got a question already, Kyle?
Yeah, I'm just curious when you described that with all this regulatory environment, we have a pharmacy system already. Why is it medical marijuana outside of the regular pharmacy system when that's already controlled and we have already all the safeties in place to do all of this things?
That's an excellent question. Let me see a raise of hands here. Is there anybody here who would like to state the claim that marijuana has no known medical value in the United States? Raise your hand if you think that marijuana has no known medical value in the United States. Okay, unfortunately, your politicians at the federal level totally disagree with all of you, because the reason we don't have a more medicalized version of cannabis is because under the federal law, cannabis is a Schedule I substance, which means it has no known medical value in the United States, and that is despite the fact that we have, with Texas, I think now 35 state laws that recognize cannabis as known medical uses in the United States. So that's caused by a disconnect at the federal level. It's caused by an administration that refuses to do what it should do under the law. The Controlled Substance Act allows the administrative branch to change the scheduling of controlled substances. They won't do it. Congress won't do it. That scheduling not only does it keep, I can guarantee you there's big pharmaceutical companies who probably ask that same question, and the ones that actually kind of saw the head of the curve are over in Europe right now doing clinical studies, because they can't do it in the United States because of the scheduling of cannabis at the federal level. That's why we can't have banks. That's why we have bad tax issues. So really it's because we have a federal law that it's in fantasy land. It's science fiction for the federal law to sit there and claim there's no known medical use of cannabis in the United States. It would be the equivalent of a man who was convicted of murder and DNA exonerated him, and everybody stood around and said, well, the science exonerates him, but I think we'll just let him sit in jail for a little bit longer. So cannabis is still in the federal penalty box.
Kurt, you look like you have a response or a comment.
Jeremy's just getting me all fired up over here. He just reminded me. No, one thing I do think that Jeremy brought out well is that this really is a social issue, and we are in transformation as a society in how we're handling this topic. I'll touch on what he was try to touch on what you were asking me to touch on in a minute. But what I would add on that is if there's
Thank
a gospel.
you for that part too. Yeah.
If I have a gospel for you to spread, it's to, from the workplace perspective, as we go through this transition, people need to know there is not a constitutional right to smoke pot. It has not. I still get questions and perspectives that are confused on this about what do you mean? It's my private time? Back off. That's not the current state of the law. The employers can enforce their policies, and I just want to make sure people are getting that message. Jeremy was asking me a little bit about the stigma about physicians, writing either recommendations for medical marijuana, which I'm actually not as familiar with as opposed to a prescription. Outside my area, sorry, Jeremy, but I would add though, just to back up what I've said before, we've got binding court cases all up and down the West Coast in Oregon, Washington, and California that all confirm companies don't have to accommodate medical marijuana yet. That's still the law. You can terminate for a positive drug test even if they flash that OMMA card. So that's the reality we're dealing with. Again, I mentioned, if they're on the employee side, again, it can feel like unnecessary regulation of your private life. I would urge someone who has a card, who regards it as important to their treatment, I would urge them to take a proactive approach. I'm not saying go out and raise your hand, say you're using it and get fired. But what I would do is consider, if you've got an approachable employer, to raise the issue while you're in compliance with their policy, in other words, when you're not smoking, and see if there's a solution you can work out. Another way to regulate your use or a compromise, another ground to meet on, because otherwise I think too many of those folks who might depend on it for their medical treatment, they're not going to have any good options here if they've got a drug testing workplace.
Let me just add, Michael's absolutely right. The federal government still considers marijuana to be a Schedule I drug. However, there is such a thing called the Cole Memorandum, which is a roadmap written by the Department of Justice for states that have legalized marijuana about what they should or shouldn't do to run afoul of federal law. It has to do with trafficking, selling to minors, enforcing. So while it is legal, it remains illegal under federal law. By the way, I would not encourage you after July 1 to smoke marijuana on federal land. A state park might be okay, but I wouldn't bank on it. So as long as what we're doing in Oregon doesn't run afoul of the Cole Amendment, or the Cole Memorandum, we're probably safe for most of the time. Now, that could change with the administration, but at the same time, it could also improve as more and more states legalize marijuana.
Another couple of questions from the audience, and we want to circle back. In that haze pamphlet in your hands, City Attorney Mary Winters addresses the Cole Memorandum as well, if you want to follow up. So Sharon, I'll have you.
Thank you. Hi, Sharon Smith. I'm a real estate land use attorney with Bryant, Woodburn, and Jarvis, and I have a boring legal technical question, probably directed at Tom from the OLCC. I have a client who's interested in doing a state-of-the-art facility, recreational facility, wants to build a beautiful building and do a production operation as well as a retail use. And of course, that's not going to happen until January, but in order for them to plan ahead and be ready to open, they need to know what the rules are going to be. So I need to know, as soon as you can tell me what your crystal ball tells you about, one, when the rules are going to be out, and two, what does it say about a recreational operation, production facility, and retail in the same location?
Well, we have a member of the Rules Advisory Committee right here, so I will we are, and jump in here, because this is maybe more your area than mine. But let me just first say where we're at here. We have appointed a Rules Advisory Committee and numerous subcommittees that address the various issues related to legalized marijuana. And they will, each of these subcommittees will come up with their set of rules, and it'll filter up to the full Rule Advisory Committee. So the short answer to your question is I don't have the slightest idea what that's going to look like.
Introduce yourself.
Hello, my name is Aviv Hadar. I'm one of the co-owners of Oregon. We are a farm-to-table cannabis company here in Oregon, obsessive about quality control. There's actually a couple people here on the Rules Advisory Committee. Bob Blake, who owns Fifth Element. Hunter Neubauer, who's a business partner of mine, is also on the rack. We all just need to work together, essentially, to build a box that doesn't leak in the whole country. So our goal, everybody's goal, is to make sure that our politicians can brag about us when they go to Washington, D.C. So, for example, we're throwing a big fundraiser for Earl Blumenauer in Portland on Friday. Him, Senator Wyden, Jeff Merkley, they're all coming out and supporting us really strongly. And if we give them stuff to brag about, if we all work together, we're going to see some of that federal change that you guys are all talking about. So that's how we will progress this, if we all truly work together and to make sure it doesn't get to minors, get rid of the black market. And the rules, the stuff you asked about, it's hard to tell, you know? I mean, who knows what types of things people are going to want. Your client may need to talk to the county and ask the county what they think.
The city.
Or the city, if it's in city limits, right. But you want to be as transparent as possible and just completely open yourself up, because that's what's going on here.
But the problem is the city can't answer the question because
It's a state one measure.
Yes.
So Measure 91 is a state one measure. Do you want to talk about it? Or not?
I'll talk for 1 second.
Okay, this is Bob Blake, another owner of Dispensary.
Hi, I was in the first RAC meeting for this subcommittee I'm on the Grow Committee. Aviv is on the Dispensary Committee. Am I correct? You're on the Dispensary, right? Retail.
Cameron's actually also on processing.
Okay, Cameron's on processing.
And then I'm on the general rack.
Right. So you're on the super rack. Okay. So you got quite a bit of representation here. We are going to present thoughts up to the super rack. And last night I actually had a beer and iced tea with Rob Patridge and Steve Marks of the OLCC, and it's very fluid. It's very, very fluid. And we're just trying to do the best we can and protect the interests of patients, protect the interests of consumers, parents, and I truly think the legislature, where I spend 2 or 3 days a week, they're struggling with this. They're really struggling. I think Tom said it really well. Byzantine on steroids. It's a tough thing. And Aviv's done a great job with his PAC, Oregon Cannabis PAC. It's a great PAC, and they're trying to represent the industry as best as they can. And it's tough stuff. The land use, the cities, the counties, that's where the entire Oregon Senate and House have been divided. They can't agree.